we were discussing if we want to throw the ball into the hoop when we're playing Rage Ball, and we were trying to figure out if it's like a strength or a dexterity or something. A physics skill would solve this problem, because now the physics of it are, I now know what kind of force and direction I need, an angle, in order to take Mr. Ball and put it into Mr. Hoop. I don't know if you've ever seen those graphics displays where people kind of go bad UI, and it's just like you can't see your characters because there's just so many elements on screen that are just like completely cluttering up the thing. I know that we're overcomplicating AC as a concept. That's kind of what we always did back in the day. It was like our whole thing for like 7 years.
It's what we do.
It's what we did for a very long time. Still do, on occasion. We make things overly complicated for your enjoyment. Alex, how are you feeling this fine, snowy day?
No, it's not snowy yet, but, you know, I'm here. I'm not excited for more snow.
Yeah, I know. It just keeps coming. There's millions of snowflakes in the air, and they're gonna fall on my head.
It's the smash mouth of snow.
Hey now, you're a rock star.
And it won't stop coming, and it won't stop.
It won't stop coming, and it won't stop coming. Okay, well, now we're X-rated, so thanks for that. Oh yeah, by the way, welcome to Total Pebble Knockdown. My name is Nathan.
And I am Alex.
Alex, I want to wish you a happy anniversary.
Oh, is it our anniversary already?
It is actually kind of a special anniversary, and I realized this just very recently when I was trying to figure out what we were going to talk about on the show. I don't know if you are aware, but on this day, March 22nd of 2015, the very first episode of Delve was uploaded to the internet.
When you say 2015...
I'm putting it right there so that I can prove to you that it was indeed published.
I think we've been doing this far too long.
Remember 2015? No,
I don't. I have zero memory of 2015.
For people who are not aware, Delve was the show that we did for like 7 years before we did this one, where we talked about game mechanics and design, similar to what we do here, but only in audio form at that time.
Boy, do I miss that.
Yeah, you don't want to be on camera, except this is how people see us now. This is how people watch us. Yeah, sorry. To celebrate this, though, I looked back at some of the early episodes of Delve, and I chose 3 episodes from the show, and I wanted to revisit them a little bit by talking about something on the same kind of subject as those. So, are you ready to do a little bit of time warping?
Let's do the time warp again, I guess.
Way back when, on episode 6, we discussed skills. In an episode called It's What I Do Best. Do you remember this?
Nope.
Cool.
I think you, might be under the assumption my memory works on any basis farther than 3 weeks out.
So 9 years is a little bit too far, huh?
Yeah, ADHD kills that memory pretty well.
Okay.
9 years is a lot.
Anyway, let me see if I can refresh the data banks that are logged into the back of your head. In that time, we were talking about the basics of skills, and basically why skills are in RPGs. That was the basic thing that we were doing, and why we have them. It has been 9 years. We have occasionally talked about skills on the show. We are familiar with it. But what I wanted to actually talk about were some skills that maybe we wish were in RPGs that you don't usually see. Ones that are not always represented, or might not be specifically represented in RPGs that could be useful. I have a few, and
Sure.
I wanted to talk a little bit about them. The first one is actually one I have to say, though, this has been represented in games for me, but if you're familiar with like a D&D or, a lot of fantasy ones, this will not be there. I usually just call it the MacGyver skill, which is the ability to just take stuff and merge them together to create something else. Basically, just to jury-rig something together. Not really a skill in D&D.
I feel like the Warhammer RPGs have something akin to that.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that I can reference is when I was playing 1879. I was a weird scientist, and so my whole thing was making little creations out of stuff that I could put together, and it was a skill called bodge up, which is basically that. You're just taking a bunch of elements and you're putting it together and straining yourself so that you essentially have like a one-use magic item that can do one of a variety of spells. Almost basically like spell effects. But they don't really have something if you're looking at like a Dungeons & Dragons, and I think we were mostly talking about skills in terms of like D&D and the wide range of ones that they've had over the years.
Yeah. I feel like that in D&D would be more specialized to a specific class like Tinkerer.
I could see an Artificer using it.
Or an Artificer, yeah.
A lot. Yeah. I feel like that would be a very useful one. I could not think of a single one of the skills that it utilizes, in 5e at least, where that would be applicable. I don't even know what the closest thing would be when we're coming to essentially like an engineering skill.
Yeah, they don't really have a
sorts.
lot of that in D&D these days. I feel like the closest thing to it would be like a craft skill.
Yeah. They used to have that, right? In like 3 or 3.5? They used to have some
Yeah, and you can
crafting.
still take professions and things like that in D&D 5e, I'm pretty sure. But it's
Sure.
not focused on as much, at least on the player's sheet side of things.
Maybe what they figure is that, like, the craftsman kits, sort of like they have the thieves' tools, but they also have carpentry tools and those things. Maybe those would be useful for something like that.
A jury rig or a, fix it or whatever. I think that's like an improv type skill too.
I could see where they might just make you do, like, a straight up either a dexterity roll or maybe an intelligence roll, depending on what you're trying to make. To accommodate that, but I'd kind of like to see it as an actual skill you utilize. There's a lot of classes that might benefit from that. Obviously, artificers are one of them, but I could even see rogues having
Sorcerers.
usefulness. Sorcerers, yeah, absolutely. And more too, that I like the idea of being able to create like single-use items, and I think that would be helpful for that. Here's one based on a lot of the conversations that we've had, and I don't really think there's a skill that fits this most of the time in RPGs. Physics. And I'm gonna tell you why, because like when you would talk about like the rail guns, and we'd make peasant rail guns, or we would literally make light rails or something like that. I feel like there should be a skill to actually do that specific, like to figure out how to do the physics of a thing to make something work. If I'm going to use a catapult, I need some way of being able to figure out that I'm going to accurately hit my target in the catapult.
Okay, so I think what you want to do is expand the knowledge, if we're using D&D as the basics for this.
Sure.
You would like to expand the knowledge categories from religion, arcane, and nature to include science and engineering.
Sure. Let's do that. Mostly so that we can solve a problem we were even talking about on the last episode. We were discussing if we want to throw the ball into the hoop when we're playing Rage Ball, and we were trying to figure out if it's like a strength or a dexterity or something. A physics skill would solve this problem. Because now the physics of it are, I now know what kind of force and direction I need, an angle, in order to take Mr. Ball and put it into Mr. Hoop. I now know how to do that, and you don't have to, like, work it out based on other skills.
Right. I mean, it would still most likely be an intelligence-based skill set.
I would imagine.
Science, engineering, and math.
Yeah, it's not a wisdom.
Although you could probably wisdom one of those, either engineering or science.
Mhm.
Probably engineering.
Yeah.
Science is knowing how to put the thing together. Wisdom is knowing that putting it together means you should point the trebuchet at your enemy and not you.
Then there was another one that was actually more of a social skill. Because typically what we have in D&D is like we have, what is it, intimidation, persuasion.
Oh, yeah, diplomacy, persuasion, same thing.
Well, you say that, and I'm thinking, like, we don't really have diplomacy. And so I was thinking...
They used to.
They used to, but they don't now. I was thinking about, well, actually, a couple things. The first one was debate. Just because I think that the idea of persuasion doesn't really suggest that you would actually have, like, a back and forth where you can actually argue a point with somebody.
Well, the thing about a debate is that you're not going to roll skill checks for debate, typically.
Okay.
You might be like, let's have a debate. Sure, okay, make your point and then roll charisma.
Right, and that's a straight charisma roll. Do you think...
Or you might be like, use your intelligence modifier, because you're making a debate based on intelligence, with the science of where you should do the trebuchet.
Yeah, or the thing that I would normally do is that if you're going to debate a point, you have to kind of actually do that debating of the point in character, not as a skill. But as your character, you gotta kind of make the case. But that does kind of make me think about the idea of social skills being difficult to put into a format like a skill, because so much of it is supposed to be roleplay, and can be used
I mean the part of that too is I don't expect every player to be able to necessarily roleplay out exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like the best points in it, like if you're gonna be like, yeah, you're gonna debate with this guy about religion, it's like, make it sound good, but I don't expect you to give me a philosophical argument. Like, make it sound kind of good and then kind of roll for it, buddy.
And then the other one I was thinking about was like mediation, which is also like a social skill, but I feel like that's mostly to try and de-escalate situations, because like I suppose persuasion would work for that, but I feel like persuasion isn't quite the same thing as like actually mediating a situation, like you being a third party for other people to try like almost like a support skill.
Yeah.
For like you have a member of your party that's dealing with the local warlord, and you have a barbarian who decides that they want to persuade the local warlord and is doing a terrible job of it because has no social skills. Something like mediation, so that you, the bard or the rogue, in this case, can come in and kind of go, let me give you a hand, almost like a help action on a specific thing.
I feel like a barbarian should do well with a warlord. They both understand feats of strength.
Can you roll charisma but use your strength skill?
Yeah.
It's charisma strength?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
It's kind of like using intimidation but with strength.
Oh, okay. So, what's that ritual that the Klingons do with the battlets?
I don't know. I don't any Star Trek at all.
Okay. Whatever that is, that could be what the skill is called. It's a negotiation with using weaponry. The other one that I was thinking about, although I figure that we've kind of already covered it, I said math. Because I think I'm, at this point, just trying to put STEM skills into RPGs.
Yeah, apparently. I'm just going to make the STEM RPG.
It's just science, technology, engineering, and math, folks. I'm just going to make the STEM RPG. Well, you know, NASA, put out an RPG, right? So...
It did.
Yeah, so, hey, I guess it's still working on the D20, D&D system, so... There's a great scenario, if you think about it. Just going to science camp, space camp. Ooh, space camp RPG. Those are the only skills you need at that point. And also, not being a nerd.
Right.
Or being really nerdy. Those should be skills. I guess my point was that I feel like there are some more specific skills for specific things that you could probably utilize. And I know that, in D&D, there's basically open lines for specific things that you can put in that's just player choice. You know, that you can make a custom skill for those.
Kind of, I guess. A lot of the time, those blank skills were left open to, say, different knowledges or different crafts or professions, but it's not really a thing that's really told you what to do in that sense. So
I remember Rembrandt had a plus 50 to confusion as a special skill.
Always confused.
Yeah, whenever Dom would ask me to roll, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got like a 58. Oh yeah, he's really confused, Nathan. There could be skills that are specific to classes too, which is something we didn't really discuss about before, but the idea that you would actually have customized skills that were for specific classes would be really useful.
If you have any skills that you think should be represented or are misrepresented in tabletop RPGs or computer RPGs for that instance, let us know down in the comments below.
You know, the thing that always confused me about the existing skills in like 3.5 was knowledge skills, because I always tried to figure out like how you're supposed to utilize them and in what ways.
What? How? There are still knowledge skills in 5e.
They just don't call them knowledge skills, though. They are,
though.
Well, I guess so.
They're knowledge arcana.
No, it's just called arcana now.
Well, it's a knowledge skill. It's an intellect-based skill.
It doesn't say knowledge in front of
knowledge?
it. No, it's just called arcana. And nature is just nature. Go look at the sheet. I'm not making it up.
I don't have a...
You can look at the sheet. Anyway, the point of the matter is, I'm right and Alex is wrong. That's really the point that I'm trying to make. Okay, fine. Open the player handbook.
Yeah, it's just called arcana. You're right. They did simplify the skill sheet a lot for 5e, which is nice.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a lot less skills than the 3.5 had by about at least half. You know, looking at the 5e player handbook and the character sheet right now, it does make me realize that as much as I do love how simplified this is, I do enjoy, I mean, I already knew this, I do enjoy a robust selection of skills as well.
Yeah.
3.5 was incredibly fun and mechanically heavy, comparatively speaking, but also made it so that characters felt vastly different depending how you specialize in their skills.
Yeah. It's similar to like Fallout, because when they did the Bethesda Fallouts for like 3, they de-emphasized skills in general and simplified them a lot, and the ones in the earlier, Black Isle Studios ones, it vastly changed how your character developed based on what you were willing to put single points into. So, skills can be a really useful thing, or they can just be supplanting, but generally I want them to do something interesting. But at any rate, you let us know in the comments down below how you feel about skills. This is one that I think we need to talk about. We haven't really discussed this in a while. Episode 8 of Delve was called Healthy Life Choices. And
we don't make those here.
No.
9 years down the road, we're still making terrible ones, I'm sure.
Yes, we learned nothing from nearly a decade.
Sure, my beard looks way better than it did back then, but I think...
We can't verify it because we were only in audio.
Verify it. Yeah, no video.
Boy, I guess that's the reason why you liked us doing the audio only back then. I can't verify what your beard looked like.
Exactly.
Or if you had one.
I don't know.
Okay. But at any rate, what we were talking about on Healthy Life Choices, as you can probably imagine, were mostly about hit points. We did, however, discuss a little bit about other ways that you could represent health or injuries and stuff like that in games.
I feel like we might have done that again.
I think we
at some point.
I think we have revisited it about other ways that you could represent it, but the question that I have is, having played as many games as I have, and 9 years out, the question I have for you is, why do we keep going back to hit points as a system? Because it seems like it is still as prevalent as always.
I feel like we don't stop using hit points because it's the, de facto... this is what we default back to.
That, and I think it's just that the numerical value that it puts on things works on a system that's based on math.
Did Design Delve recently do a video about that? Design Delve 3 weeks ago did a video called "Are Health Bars Making Games Worse?"
I haven't
It's
seen
not
that one.
exactly that, but
Yeah.
it is that.
Yeah.
And it's I did watch it. It was really good. You should watch it. Hey, if you're listening to this and you don't watch Design Delve, but you like talking about mechanics, go watch Design Delve on Second Wind.
They've watched
Good
us.
shit. At least he
At
has.
least once.
Yes.
But my question isn't so much on the design or the mechanics of it, but kind of just the reason why it seems like we default back to it as often as we do, because it is a classic in terms of games of all sorts, that everything has like a hit point value, and there's been a lot of attempts to kind of move away from it with like injury systems or something like that, but it feels like we always kind of revert back to, this is the numbers of how many little life digits you have, and you have to utilize it. And I don't know if it's because of nostalgia or because a utilitarian perspective would suggest that it's just the easiest, most efficient way to do it.
I will say, there's a game I've been playing recently that does not quite do health the same way. It doesn't technically have hit points or health points or any HP like that.
Oh, okay.
And that's Project Zomboid. I do have it modded for a lot of quality of life things to make it so I can enjoy it more. So I do have a thing that's got all my stats on the side that has the UI with health, like 0 to 100 kind of deal.
Sure.
Because the game is very vague with a lot of the things, because it's not a very easy game. It can be very tough and harrowing. I don't know if you've seen it played ever.
I don't think I have. Maybe just some demo footage.
Sure, it's from 2013, but they're still chugging along on it, you know? You get moodlets. It's like, oh, I'm stressed. Oh, I'm hungry, or whatever like that, because it's a survival zombie apocalypse game. I need how stressed is stressed, how bored is bored, how hungry is hungry.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, because, like, it goes, I'm getting a bit hungry. I'm like, does that mean I'm, like, hungry? Like, do I need to eat this whole chicken? Or can I like have a bag of chips and will that solve my problem?
Right.
You know, because I personally can go, I'm hungry, but I'm not whole chicken just scarf down my face hungry. I am bag of chips. I'll be fine hungry.
Right.
So I need that UI element to help me kind of be like, all right, well, I'm hungry, but I'm only like 10 out of 100 hungry. So like I don't really need to eat 3 chickens. So for my quality of life and me enjoying the game more, I need that. Because otherwise I'm like, I don't know how hungry I am. But the same thing it does for injuries, is that you do have no health bar on the native game without that mod. But you do have like part of your info panel, which has like your body in it. If you have injuries, it'll be like you have a scratch on your arm or your thigh or your chest or your head or whatever. Because it's got the ragdoll out everywhere from foot to head. You know, you can get injured lots of places, and you can apply bandages. And then it's got this kind of overall health bar.
Sure.
It goes up and down, and it will be full or missing chunks, and it'll be like minor damage or moderate damage, critical damage. And that's kind of what it'll say, but there is no like health bar. There's no hit point value to it. So it's like, okay, I'm missing this chunk out of a bar this big. Like, minor damage, but, you know, I'm still a little injured, you know? So that game does not use HP or hit points in that way. It uses a much more vague, and you can see on your body where you're injured, or if you are still injured, for instance.
I see. Okay.
So that one does a good job, I think, of doing that. Despite my need for that more clear data for me, it does do a really good job not using HP in that way.
Right. I think the biggest problem that I've had with life bars is that I've gotten very interested in, I guess, more natural ways of framing information on screen. And life bars seem to just be this big old bar, usually, that they'll put onto screen that just creates a UI element that we didn't really need. I don't know if you've ever seen those graphics displays where people will kind of go, bad UI, and it's just like, you can't see your characters because there's just so many elements on screen that are just, like, completely cluttering up the thing. And
there was some game I saw, like, a couple screenshots of, because I was looking at a game on Steam, like, interesting game, open it up, look at the screenshot, and just UI right in your face.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
like,
it's just
who made that decision?
way too much information there. And so it's the reason why you'll then have people talk to you about, like, very clean displays. Dead space is one that they always point to because it is all right through the thing.
In that video that I talked about from Design Delve, go watch it. He also mentioned that as well.
Right.
As one of the things.
Although I will say that there is another game that I played recently that I think does maybe even a better job of it, which was Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus, which is, the Metro series, if you've played that at all, maybe not, but it's a shooter series from a famous set of novels about the post-apocalypse in Russia. And Metro Exodus kind of takes that into more open-world spaces. I'll have a Titanium Mine on it, probably up by the time we do this. That whole UI can be done through no elements on screen. And so the way they handle life in that game is basically you start to see, like, the blood start to come over the top of the screen, over your eye line, when you start to get injured. And so the more blood that's there, the more you realize that I'm in an injury state, and I need to try to take, like, a health stim in order to try and get that to go away, because it's now going to start obstructing your vision, and it's right there on the screen.
Right.
But, ultimately, that's just another way to represent a health bar.
I mean, it is, but it's a lot more vague.
Yes, it is.
It's not numerical.
That's true. It's not numerical. Although behind the scenes, you know that it's got to have some kind of numerical value.
Sure, it's got a value.
Yeah. It's just you don't notice it as much. I don't know how you would utilize that in, like, a tabletop RPG, though. Because, again, numbers kind of are a big thing for those systems.
I mean, again, I think we went over this at least once on TPK, and I'm sure back 9 years ago. You can use systems that are not HP for hit points as well. The Warhammer RPGs famously use wounds. Mm-hmm. And say, some of those are like, yeah, you can take 10 wounds. Mm-hmm. And that's
it.
That's it. And it's very lethal because it's like, all right, well, everything does, a D10 worth of damage minus armor minus toughness.
Right.
And some of these will go straight through armor, and some of those go straight through toughness. So it's like, all right, well, now you're making just saving throws against, taking blood, like, damage that murders you.
Right.
So...
But,
it's still a numeric value, it's just called a different name.
That's what I was thinking, is that the wounds in some way are almost like a health bar, though. Because, you can only take so many notches of damage, essentially. One thing I think we did discuss was the idea of making wounds that actually had something more critical to them. When you get a wound that it actually affects you in other ways besides just number go down. That, you actually get injured in a certain way. I've seen those systems, too. I think Call of Cthulhu does something similar, mostly with mental stats, but that you actually do suffer damages when you take any kind of psychic or mental damages in that way.
The Warhammer RPGs have traumas.
Traumas, yes. Yep.
You can sustain not just wounds, then you can take injuries, and then you can have, like, bodily injuries that are physical and permanent. For instance, you can get your hand chopped off.
Love it.
It doesn't affect you a whole lot. You can get it replaced with bionics or whatever, but point is, you've suddenly taken a grievous thing. And when you do that too, it's like you can have shock and other things that happen from a grievous bodily injury like that.
Oh, sure.
And then healing in that system also worked a little differently too, because if you're lightly injured, only missing a couple wounds, you heal pretty quickly.
Yes.
But the more damage you are, the slower you will heal, like out of combat.
Mm.
And I think that works really well because it actually, when you think about it, is like real life
Mm-hmm.
in a way. Because if I have a little cut, it'll heal pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a deep cut, that takes a little longer.
Yeah.
And if I have a chunk of, skin taken off me, a chunk of flesh and muscle taken out, that might heal on its own, but it's going to need some serious care, and it will take a very long time for that to actually heal.
Right.
And I don't even know if muscles actually would grow back in that instance, personally.
Could.
But the point is,
Right.
It takes a lot longer.
But ultimately, it seems like the hit points are what we come back to. Even though we like to try and kind of move away from it and try different things, we keep just returning to having a freaking bar that has a total number on it. And I just think that it comes back to the fact that games are primarily math. It's kind of what they have to be in order for them to be games. And so a numerical value is usually what we equate to. And it's not just with health, but it's also usually with stamina and with whatever you're using for magic stats, for mana or arcana or whatever like that. It is your pools, everything like that is based on a numerical value. And I think it's really just very difficult to move away from that in any meaningful way unless it's specifically set up for the system, and especially if it's like more of a story-focused kind of game. But in anything where you have combat, you're going to know that your weapons are going to have to do so much damage, and it has to hit up against something in order for it to mean anything. I just don't know of a better system that's going to work for just a larger overarching sort of framework.
I don't think one specific system should work for a larger overarching thing. I think it should be each thing has a thing that works for it.
But it does feel like it's
I wouldn't want.
It shoehorns
I wouldn't
well
want
into
the same HP system that I'm using for D&D to overlap with the same thing I'm using in a video game that has no correlation to needing that. Again, though, great design delve video about this exact topic, basically.
They stole
you
it
should
from
check
us
that
from
out
9 years ago.
Yeah, good job. Thanks, jerk. Not really. It's a great video. It really is a good video. It goes into both diegetic and non-diegetic designs with using health.
Okay.
For instance, as per the Dead Space
Yes.
example, or like why you need feedback with hits versus not needing feedback with hits in something like Hollow Knight or like Dark Souls. So go check that out if this topic is any interest to you past what the hell we've said. Go check out that design delve video about it. It's great.
Yes. Let us know what
And
you
tell
think.
we sent you.
Delve episode 7. We had an episode called Safe Inside the Shell, and that episode was about armor. And so we just talked about health. Now we get to talk a little bit about armor. And at the time, we were really talking about how you just figure out armor classes and about what they are and how they mitigate damage and different ways that they do that. But there was a follow-up question I had about that I wanted to discuss here, which is something that's always eluded me, especially when we talk about Dungeons and Dragons. So I think we're just gonna talk Dungeons and Dragons specifically for this, and the AC class of 5e. How do we differentiate between armor and dexterity for the AC class? Because if you know anything about that, if I have a high dexterity, or if I have a very low dexterity but I just wear a giant plate of metal on me, I might have the same armor class. Even though I am diametrically getting damage reduction or mitigation by very different means.
Mm-hmm.
One is because I am literally just like, I'm avoiding the damage, and one because my armor is thick enough that the damage doesn't hit me.
Mechanically speaking, there is no real difference if your AC and D&D is the same.
Exactly, which is why I'm thinking that there should be a way to differentiate, because they are so different in terms of what you're doing. They're just fundamentally different. And I keep thinking to myself that maybe it's about specific damage mitigation, even if you are getting hit, or if it's about speed. Like that, if you have really heavy armor, you might not be as fast on your feet, or you might...
Well, a lot of the times, if you're wearing really heavy armor, a lot of those suits in D&D, as an example, will have, like, a disadvantage on stealth, for instance.
Yes. Heavy armor.
But I also...
Yes.
Yeah, the heavier armor will. But I also think that you would have a tough time with reflex or evasion or with your dexterity saves.
Yes. These are other things.
And I know that heavier armor also impedes your actual movement speed, but not necessarily your initiative. Yeah. So, like, if you have a max dex of 2, you can only add 2 of your dexterity bonus, even if you have 4 to your AC. Okay. But at that point, you'd be wearing a lighter armor anyways. There's no point if you have an AC that is +4 that you would be using a armor that doesn't let you take full advantage of it. But the issue that you're talking about is one of mitigation, which, again, going back to like the Warhammer ones, mitigation is important. Armor that is big and bulky but negates more damage is good because it means you're taking less damage and it's harder to get through the armor. Mm-hmm. Lighter armor might be great because it lets you evade attacks more. Where the bigger, tougher armors are going to be like, yeah, you don't get a dodge. It doesn't give you any bonus dodge. It actually takes away your chance to dodge. Mm-hmm. The lighter ones are like, you can dodge, but this is not going to offer you nearly as much damage mitigation. I think a game, and I'm loath to say it, but a game that actually does a really good job with this is your FromSoft games.
Thanks.
Because your big, heavy armors negate a lot more damage. They offer a lot of protection at the cost of not being as mobile.
Yeah, and you start to feel that a lot when you start to put on really heavy armor, because you just being able to roll is nigh on impossible, the heavier the armor set is. Just moving as a general rule, and you use so much more stamina. When you're wielding like heavy weapons, you definitely use a lot more stamina, but it goes down faster, which is the reason why they try to kind of give you the idea that heavier armor is not always better and is usually very detrimental, because you can't evade a lot of attacks. You could if you were wearing practically nothing.
Which is why some players actually just play that game with no armor, naked.
Yep. Well, and because the way that they do that, too, is your load is set up so that it's light or medium or heavy, and that affects a lot of things. It affects how well you can dodge and parry and all of that stuff, but it also will affect the heaviness of your attacks. If I remember this correctly, like, you have more force behind your attacks if you have heavier loadouts, but you can't attack as fast. So there's definitely a reason why you would want to lower it so that you're not totally encumbered. Although I guess that there are some builds where they've made them like really heavy, and the force you get from the weapons, if you have like big heavy weapons, when you do hit, is just devastating. But that's more from an offensive standpoint than anything. Yeah. When it comes to a dexterity class, there isn't a lot that it benefits from besides the, oh, look, I'm just really fast on my feet. Which is, I guess, the reason why I felt like there should be more differentiation, because wearing a giant piece of armor or wearing nothing and just, being able to run through the tires really quickly apparently equates to the same damage mitigation number. And it feels like that doesn't make sense in practice.
And not all, but a lot of tabletop games suffer from that, because the trade-off becomes, well, do we want to have armors all negate damage? Like, do you want to have each armor have a mitigation to it? Or do we just want to give it, like, an armor class that's hit? And the more you add to that, the more it actually will bog down the combat a bit more, so simplifying it is good. I know in the game, when I had been working on an RPG myself, I had said that you could take skill points in the combat skills too, like taking points in learning how to use weapons, learning how to use armor better. But I probably explained this years ago. Find it in an episode of the old show. But the difference was that, say you want to specialize in light armor, you get a skill point, or however many skill points, and then you can be like, all right, you can do an upgrade now. You can either choose to put a point into increasing the armor value, or you can put a point into increasing like dexterity value of it.
Okay.
So either you can go, this armor is going to allow me to move better in it, or it will just straight up add more mitigation to me. So it's either you can be harder to hit or take less damage. And then each time you leveled up that skill, you could choose one or the other. So you could go light armor, full mitigation route, or light armor, full evading attacks route, for instance. And with doing that, you could take it so your light armor would potentially have the same armor value as a piece of heavy armor because of the way you've learned how to use it. On the side note to that, you could also take your heavy armor or your medium armor. No one ever uses medium armor, though.
Right.
You could take the heavy armor and you could say, I'm going to keep adding to the armor mitigation here so that I would take even less damage. This heavy armor now becomes impenetrable. You know, I'm taking an extra 5 less damage each hit. Or you could go the other route and make it so your heavy armor has the movement functionality and hit evasion of a lighter armor. So you go, this thing blocks a lot of damage, but also I can evade more attacks. So you could kind of mix and match that, and then if you wanted to, again, fully optimize, no armor, or no damage, like take very minimal damage, or just maximize your evasion.
Sure.
And I thought that was an interesting way to do that, because then at least you're giving your armor variety and making them feel very distinct because of how you decide you want to use them.
It's sort of like, you remember Fallout, right? From back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, there was a change that they made in how they represented armor from Fallout 3 to Fallout New Vegas. There was something in Fallout 3 called damage reduction, and in New Vegas it was called damage threshold. And they function very differently, DR and DT. So your armor values in Fallout 3 were like a mitigation of damage that you would take. So you have a damage reduction of like 10. It's like 10% is what you're mitigating of whatever you would be hit with. Damage threshold was basically the number that the damage would have to be for it to actually hurt you. So if you have like a damage threshold and it's like 25, and someone hits you with a little gun and it only does like 15 points of damage, it basically does like nothing to you at all. The second it gets over that 25, though, it's like doing full damage.
Which is weird. Honestly, that's weird.
When they did it with New Vegas.
Oh, I do 24 damage, you take 0 damage. 26 damage, you take 26 damage.
I think the representation of that was that what it would take to penetrate the armor, but once it gets through the armor,
sure,
it would be technically
but like
through you.
I guess
that it's.
I mean, if you wanted to go with a bulletproof vest as an example, technically a bullet that doesn't pierce the bulletproof vest, is going to not like hurt you, but it's still gonna hurt. Like you're still you would still take a couple points of bludgeoning damage from a bullet hitting you in the chest with a bulletproof vest on.
Well, once that goes, you're not gonna like it. You're not gonna like it.
But once that bullet goes through the vest, you've taken optimal damage. You've taken a lot more damage.
Right.
But in the case of the threshold being it's zero, it's either 0 damage or full damage.
I think I think it was like 1 damage or something. Like if it doesn't hit the threshold, it's like very minimal, and then it was like full damage.
I don't
after it hits
know.
the
If
board.
you do something like that, see, in tabletop, that gets to the point where it's too much min-maxing, I think, at that point. Not min-maxing, but like, you're putting a lot more in it than makes it fun at the table, I think,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, because suddenly it's like, all right, well, you need to do all this math right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it bogs everything down. So, like, you could be like, oh yeah, if it doesn't, hit your AC, or it doesn't go past it, you could be like, all right, you take, like, less damage. And that's fine. But, like, reduce damage by half. Okay, but then people are just going to aim higher. It's a weird system.
Yeah. Because, I mean, damage threshold, though, I think is more representative of what the AC system is, because it is like a number that you have to hit over, and if you do hit over it, you take the full damage of it, unless you have some other mitigation tactic when it comes to D&D.
I mean, that AC is just a measure of whether you get hit or not.
Right.
And then if you have, like, damage reduction, then it's like, alright, you've been hit, but you also have damage reduction, so there is a mitigation system in there. It's just not... Everyone does not have the ability to tap into it.
I do like that there are, like, feats that, when they started to focus a little bit more on feats with 5e, that make you better at utilizing armor. Not just because you obviously have to have light or medium or heavy armor if you are going like proficiency so that you can use them, but they also created expertise classes that actually gave you bonuses for having them on. I think the best one people cite is if you are a heavy armor user, there's heavy armor expert, and if you get hit with a normal weapon and it actually does do damage to you, it reduces all sources by 3. So it is in many ways
brutal.
It is a literal damage reduction even after you get hit.
Yeah.
So, which especially in the early game is huge, because you're probably not running across a lot of people with magical weapons or fireballs. But from normal damage just to get the straight damage reduction, which I understand for a heavy armor user. That's not something that you would get with light armor. One thing that I think could be very useful, though, for light armor, if you are a dexterity class, is to lean into the whole dexterity thing, which is that not only, you're taking the full brunt of something if you hit over the AC, but maybe having the opportunity to do counterattacks or parries or something like that to maybe stagger your enemy for a return.
Sure, I don't think that would count in towards the armor as much as it would be skill with weapons, however.
Right. I'm just trying to think of ways that you could utilize it in different ways by having those like I've successfully mitigated this, which means that I have avoided the attack, but on the back end of that I can actually do something. I think that monks have something similar to that. Like if you're going to get hit by an arrow, it's that deflect missile thing. You can reduce the damage that you take from a missile, but then you can also, if you deflect all of the damage from the missile, you also have an attack of opportunity that you can do, where you toss the missile back. Which I thought was always fun, because I just like the image of the idea of the monk just like catching the arrow midstream and just like whipping it around and just throwing it back. I know that we're overcomplicating AC as a concept. That's kind of what we always did back in the day. It was like our whole thing for like 7 years.
It's what we do.
It's what we did for a very long time. Still do on occasion. We make things overly complicated for your enjoyment. But I guess if anyone has some ideas on how you could creatively use armor classes or damage mitigation in unique ways so that we can figure out how to do it with heavy armor and light armor that was not done by FromSoft, please
that was not done by me.
Or Alex way back when in the EXP Limited system, which never got released.
Yeah, well, that's not what it was named anyway, so it's fine.
I thought that's what
That's just me.
Oh. Secret EXP project.
So secret that I don't even know what it is.
Project Blue Book.
No, that's different. That's declassified.
Area. Yeah, we talk about it all the time, so it's definitely not declassified for us. Alex, how do you feel taking a walk down memory lane to the way back?
Oh, it hurts.
It hurts? Your brain?
Hurts, don't it?
Yeah. Too bad. And you know what? What are we going to do in 9 years from now?
If we're still doing this show in 9 years, I'm.
You're going to retire?
Yeah.
To a beach.
We better
somewhere?
be making enough money that I can retire in 9 years.
It better be like an actual show we're doing for like a living at that point.
In 9 years from now, boy, we better be monetized by then.
Hey, listen, we're only about a decade away. We're going to make it happen. Until that time, if you want to help us on that journey, where could they go on the internet, Alex?
You can visit us on the internet at totalpebbлекnockdown.com. It's our brand new website.
That's right.
But I also realized that since the old website is no longer active, nothing that we've been posting has been posting on its own to Twitter again.
Perfect!
So, that's a thing.
Yay!
Oops.
You can also, by the way, find us on every podcast app known to mankind, but you can also find us on YouTube. That's usually where most people find us, so check us out over there at Total Pebble Knockdown. And make sure to like and review and subscribe to all those places. We appreciate it. It is a slow process right now, but it is continually growing, so we're in good shape. And feel free to check us out on a wasteland of social media. We're all over the place. I am at Titanium.
I am at EXP Limited, and the show is at Pebble Knockdown.
Check us out there for all of your pebbly needs as we start to head into spring and past all of the snowy times, which we're still...
Oh, I hope so.
Still in somehow in March, so... Crazy times. I want to get out and start planting stuff, and I can't yet.
Yeah, ground's still frozen.
Spring hindering.
You know what the producers always said?
Springtime for Hitler in Germany?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's pushing up daisies over there.
That backfired on him, didn't it?
The daisies?
No, the producers. Backfired on the producers.
Oh, yes.
That's...
Hey, fun fact, I was looking it up and didn't realize that the producers that came out in, 2010?
Oh, that's a remake.
Yeah, no, I knew it was a remake, but it's Mel Brooks.
Yes.
I did not realize the original one was also Mel Brooks.
Yeah. So was the play. But...
So, I guess the thing is that the original one was set during the actual time period. Like, it took place in the actual time period it was in.
Yeah, it was in the...
And then
it was contemporary.
The remake is like a... What was it?
It's a timepiece.
It's like
a period piece.
It's a period piece.
Of
and I was
that
like,
time.
that's hilarious because they're the same thing by the same guy, just like 40 years apart.
Yep. Yep.
So, good movie though.
Love Mel Brooks.
Seacrest out.
Yeah. This was a Mel Brooks appreciation post.
Everything is Mel Brooks appreciation post.
It's Frankenstein. Also, we're out. Bye.